minutes of it. Um, and so Amy has sent out an agenda to everyone. I hope everyone got minutes. There is at the bottom of your screen a raise hand function. If you do that, I'll try and note on the list I've got of people. If you raise your hand, I'll try and call on you. Otherwise, flash it here, and if I see you, I'll call on you. And the agenda has introductions, then minutes, then committee reports, and then 4 or 5 items under other business. Does anyone think that we should add any other items to the agenda for tonight? I don't hear anything, so I'm going to deem that the agenda is approved. I'd like, still don't see Michael Burris has yet to check in, so I'd like to defer on introductions. We have a new town planner, and I'd like him to introduce himself to all of you and have you introduce yourselves to him because he's still pretty new. So I'd like to defer that until he gets here. And so Amy also sent out the minutes to everyone. I hope you had a chance to look at them. I read them and thought they were really complete, very accurate. I didn't notice any mistakes, but other people may have read them. And did anyone notice anything that needed to be corrected?
John, this is Bob Daler.
Yeah, Bob.
And in the minutes in our section on infrastructure and safety,
yeah,
it lists me as the chairman of the Infrastructure Oversight Committee, and the chairman is actually Steve Willett. I am the vice chair.
Okay. Amy, did you get that correction?
Yep, I'll fix that.
Okay. Any other corrections?
No, everything was fine.
Would someone like to make a motion approving the minutes of September 1st?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? All right, they're approved. Thank you for that. Still think it's a good idea to defer introductions. And so your chair is going to buy some time for our town planner to get here by saying that the trustees of reservations put out a report, which I think Amy sent out an electronic copy of to members on the mailing list. I got mine in the mail about a week ago, and it is titled "The State of the Coast," and I think trustees of reservations now just called trustees, but it looked at Buzzards Bay. So it's as opposed to the report that David just mentioned, which looked at all of Massachusetts. This report looked at what we are working on, that is climate change, and it focused on our larger neighborhood, that is Buzzards Bay, and what the impacts are. And it used the calculations that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts used, and it used the consultant Woods Hole Group that we used when we did the East Beach vulnerability study. And so If you want to get a copy of this, you can contact the trustees or you can contact Amy and she'll get you this. But I do want to, there's a section just on Westport that I want to take just a minute to summarize, because it does give some facts and figures that I think are credible and illuminating. In terms of daily tidal flooding may impact 104 buildings. 10-year flood may impact 751 buildings. That's just 6% of town buildings, and 100-year flood may impact over 1,000 buildings, 1,026 buildings. The vulnerable East Beach and Horseneck Road area includes 80 homes, major boatyard, a restaurant, and seasonal trailers. Sea level rise is also projected to impact homes along the Westport River. As far as roads go, which is Bob Daler's subcommittee, daily tides may flood 0.8 miles of road. A 10-year flood projected to inundate 14 miles. That's 5% of the town roads. A 100-year flood may impact 19.5 miles. That's 7% of Westport's roads. Vulnerable areas include town docks, low-lying bridges, roads, portions of East Beach, River Road, Atlantic Avenue, John Reed Road, Kirby Brook, Main Road, and Route 6, and the parking area for the town docks and the harbor masters. On salt marshes, 89%, that's 89%, 739 of 828 acres of critical high marsh habitat may be lost to flooding or conversion to low marsh. Overall, nearly half, 48% of the salt marsh in Westport may be completely lost. That's 417 of 877 acres. Recent studies have shown significant loss of salt marsh islands in Westport River, which is something we've talked about. And last, beaches, 8.6 miles of shoreline are classified as beach. 5.5 miles of coastline are publicly accessible. East Beach and Westport has seen over 150 feet of erosion in the last 120 years. So, and that is something, of course, we dealt with a lot in the East Beach study, and it is part of Mike Sullivan's water. So there are some specific sightings. David says, what's your question, David?
Oh, yes. Hi. Which RCP was used for those forecasts?
The high.
Okay, so the crazy one.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And it's the one they say the state is using. High global emissions and projects 1.3 feet to 2.6 feet and 4.4 feet rise above 2008 baseline. And so I think that the question there is, we're going to get that. The question is by when. All right. So let us, I still don't think we have our town planner. So let's proceed with reports from subcommittees. Engagement and fundraising. David Cole, you are here.
Okay, I'll unmute myself. I just would start off by saying that both John Bullard and I have been touting our Westport program for this committee. And John, you gave a talk to a group over in Fairhaven last week, I believe.
Yep.
About us. And I attended a meeting of Mass Audubon last week and then shared with them a short report on what we've done. Mass Audubon has a program called Climate Champions that is trying to address climate issues. And much of their attention has been focused on State House matters. and I've been trying to get them to look at local matters. And so I've tried to share with them what we're doing here and got a very positive response back from the head of that Climate Champion program. And they may share that with other people in Mass Audubon, especially the Climate Champion group. And I just mentioned to anybody who's a member of Mass Audubon, if you haven't already done so, well, you might want to join the Climate Champion program at Mass Audubon. It's focused on the right things, and we may have an opportunity to broaden their focus a little bit. So that's one point. And then I've mentioned earlier, there's this new report from Massachusetts that's come out that what Amy or may want to send around. I've sent a link to it, and maybe send it to all the members of the committee, at least the link, so you can look at it. And there's an executive summary and also more detailed study of different areas. But I think it's a pretty comprehensive thing and indicates where Massachusetts is coming from and looking at us, and that's helpful to know. Several questions that I've asked. Last year we were going to apply for an action grant, an MVP action grant, to fund the outreach portion of our activities. And there were two other action grant applications in the queue, and so we deferred to the other two. But I'm asking for a question with this committee whether we would be in line to apply for action grant to fund our outreach activities when the next application comes up, presumably in the spring. So I don't know whether you want to discuss that now or just put that on the table for something that we will discuss at a future meeting. What do you suggest, John?
I think it is a appropriate question because from the first time you raised it, David, I think that we need to get some resources for this committee. Operating as just volunteers is holding us back. And I thought Serped was a good option, but this committee thought that was premature. So I think we need to, and I don't know whether MVP is the right avenue or not. I'm wishing that our town planner, but maybe Amy, you may have had some conversations, or Jim Whiten may have had some conversations about the way to proceed on that.
Okay, go ahead.
I would say that we should put this request in the queue and for the town to think about. But I think to be successful and to get the town to back it, I think you need to flush out what you want. The previous request, I think, to Serped, Serped is really not the right place for a general help with this kind of thing. They're more project oriented. And so if we had a project, they would help us with it. We could use either selectmen's hours or planning board hours, or get a different grant to help us with a project. But they're not set up to be the general office and chief cook of our efforts here. But I think that, you could, if you make a case for MVP, again, I think that they're looking for projects. Courtney's on this call. I don't know if she's still here. Maybe she could lend an ear to what you want to do, David, and let you know whether she thinks it's a good thing.
Okay, well, let me elaborate a bit. The MVP guidelines have extensive guidance on outreach and engagement. And so I saw this grant as funding the outreach and engagement by our committee. And however we try to construct it within our committee. We had talked last time round about trying to bring Serpent into this. I agree with you. I don't think that's a good way to go. Serpent is trying to organize their own climate resiliency planning, and they seem to be having a hard time doing it. It's been in the works, but still not resolved for some months. And I hope when they get their thing up and running, we can work with them. But I don't think we should be looking to them to support us. On the other hand, I've raised the question, now that we've added a town planner and an assistant town planner and a secretary in the planning office, whether we can look to the planning office to help us with more of the administrative work and not think of going elsewhere to find funding and people to do that. And so that we could use the money from this just to engage in outreach and engagement activities and not to support the general administrative support for the whole committee.
David, I think it is very possible that we could allocate some of Amy's time to be the coordinator of this, as she has really been doing already. She has been
Right.
coordinating the meetings and coordinating the agenda posting and all of that stuff. I think that as we go along and we get Michael well versed on what we're trying to do else on other things, I think it'll be clear how much time
Okay.
we
Well,
have.
I think we've made a lot of headway in Jeff Canton in particular has developed proposals, plans for both outreach and communication. And we've shared those with the other subcommittees. And I think we've gotten feedback from one or two of the other subcommittees as to what is the message that they want to communicate. And we haven't gotten it from all. And so I think if we can get that in the next month or so, then I think we can really put together a well spelled out proposal for how we want to go about engagement, what we want to do, and what we need funding for to do it, and come in with a new proposal for an MPP action grant.
Courtney, you have your hand up.
Thanks, John. My name is Courtney Rocha. I'm the regional coordinator for the MVP program. And before the grant comes out, I highly suggest that you meet with me and I can let you know if it's one applicable for our program, whether it would be competitive. And I can also give you notes on how to improve your application. So if you wanted to download the application from last year, it's probably not going to change so much, and start whittling away at point values within the application. I'd be happy to meet with you and flesh out some grant ideas for our program. And I offer this to every town.
Yeah, what's the date on that, Courtney?
So we're thinking that the RFR will be released sometime at the end of March. So that would be the last point I could give advice. And then it would be due 6 weeks later.
So when should we get together with you, in early March, or you suggest before that?
Preferably, the best success I've seen is if you meet with me and I would tell you, yes, this is a good fit for our program. No, it's not a good fit. And then you would develop your idea, what you would want the budget to look like. And then I can give you tips on how to really fine tune your application.
Courtney, can I suggest we will try to reach out to work with you in the next couple of months and then get intense by the middle of January, and from then on until you can't help us anymore in early March.
Yep, That sounds good. I will say that we can't give funding to town staff, but we can give funding to what we call a community liaison, which is someone who represents a specific group within the community. But generally they're more marginalized groups, but
Yes.
I feel like you could truly make a case for depending on what your final deliverables are.
Yes. Okay, we understand that. We won't be looking for funding for town staff. We're gonna try to solve that by other means. But we're gonna try to come up with a comprehensive program of outreach and engagement for this committee.
Courtney, can you fund professional technical assistance? You know, like a Woods Hole group like we had with the East Beach Committee?
Could we fund them?
Yes.
Yeah, so a lot of times how it works is you'll put together a budget and some towns will put it out to bid depending on what your procurement laws are. And then you would select a consultant, whether it be Serped or Woods Hole Group, and then they would perform the task for the amount of grant funding awarded.
Okay.
John, I don't think we're gonna need that. I think we've got talent on the committee that will.
I think we need it. Go ahead.
Well,
Yes.
I'm sorry, you don't know the people that we're working with, so.
I would suggest, I
We'll
think the
present
best
our
option is
case.
to have partnerships with community organizations that exist that, if there's, the Watershed Alliance or Groundworks New Bedford, something that an establishment or a community organization that already exists tend to have the best applications.
Okay. Thank you, Courtney, very much.
Yes.
David, in the minutes, it said you were going to reach out to the high school when we got into fall.
Yeah, I haven't done that yet, and I'm out of town. I've been engaged with the high school on worrying about comprehensive funding, and that's so much of a focus for them right now that I will get around to it, but I haven't done it yet.
Okay. Does that complete your report?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And
Any
just to
questions of
Just-
David?
Just to encourage the committees, the various subcommittees that haven't done it yet, to give us their feedback on what they want to communicate.
David has an active committee. Any other members of his committee want to add anything?
I just wanted to ask Courtney a question based on Jim's comment earlier. We talk about, funding for engagement, but does it need to be earmarked around a more specific project? Picking up on John's point about getting a more professional consultant, for example, based on this trustees report about the impact of sea level rise on the various aspects of Westport. Is it better to have a proposal really focused on a specific project rather than the general issue of engagement and visibility?
It doesn't have to be aligned specifically with a project. So for instance, they might do a culvert replacement, but then have general education around climate change at the high school or a project of that nature. If anyone wants to talk MVP outside of this meeting, I'm happy to take it offline and you can email me. I'll put my email in the notes and I'll talk to you about any project ideas. The issue is it has to have a deliverable, something that you can hand in to me and the state for a certain amount of money, so that we give out funding for a specific task that is funded. So if you do general outreach, is it an event? Is it a kiosk? Is it signage? So there has to be some sort of resulting deliverable for it to be awarded funding through our program.
Courtney, my sense is that the guidelines that you have under the MVP cover all of that very well. And we'll work with that and we'll talk with you.
Okay. Any other members of the committee want to add anything? thank you, David, very much, and members of the committee for this. The issue involves the whole town, and so this committee's task is engaging the whole town, which is no small responsibility. So we appreciate your work in this. The next item on the subcommittee reports is water. As I mentioned, Chairman Mike Sullivan is, I think, stuck in the Southeast Expressway. That's an ad for the train coming to Fall River in New Bedford, if you didn't notice. And so I will attempt to give the report. Mike circulated minutes. Amy, did you get Mike's minutes?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. Did you ask me if I got Michael's minutes?
Yeah.
I did not, no.
All right. So I will send them to Amy, and if anyone wants them, you can get them from Amy. And there were 10 people at the meeting, which the minutes said occurred on November 27th, which would be hard for that to have happened. I think it was October 27th. And including Dave Sprogus and Phil Weinberg, and I think Constance was there. So if I make mistakes, there can be several people present here who can jump in. And so Mike started by saying there was some discussion about open meeting law. I'm not going to get into that because that's later on in tonight's agenda. Attorney Laura Hadley brought that up. We did spend quite a bit of time on the substance of getting ready for a state of the town report. When I say report, that is shorthand, and I keep thinking of a report as, you know, like what I showed you, this thing. But I don't want it for people to assume that's the product of what we're going to deliver, because I don't know what form that's going to take. It may be a series of action papers. It may be, who knows, a TikTok video. That's up to this committee, how we want to communicate with people. But I'm going to use the shorthand report for how we gather information and transmit it to the citizens of Westport. So I'll just use that shorthand word, report. So we're going to gather this information of, and Mike summarized where we are in 7 steps. The first, identify climate change and sea level rise drivers and develop narratives for each. He says we're mostly done with that. 2, brainstorm water-related risks to Westport. That's done. 3, develop narratives for each risk. Mostly done. 4, consensus prioritizing risks. That's really something we spent a lot of time on in the last couple of meetings. Done. 5, and I'll go over that in a minute. 5, initial brainstorm of potential projects to address the top priority risk. We just started that. And 6, draft water subcommittee initial state of the town report. We haven't started that. And finalize the state of the town report and submit to this big committee. That's not started. And so, as you can see, this is a pretty good outline of what our work should be, and a progress report. And then he outlined the way we prioritized is with an Excel spreadsheet, and everyone had through Zoom, you know, the famous, you got 3 stars and votes, and you walked up to the board and placed your stars, and Mike kept the tabulation on it. And the highest priority with 20 points, and I'm going to read the points so you get a sense of spread, was sea level rise and storm frequency impact on private property and the difficulty of getting property insurance and financing. And that last point, which I had been assigned to research and had, when I first looked at it, determined this wasn't a big issue. The FAIR Plan in Massachusetts had things under control, but from reading news articles in Florida, people who thought they had insurance, their insurance companies were going bankrupt, a large percentage of them. So the top priority, according to the folks in our committee, and there were 10 people in this committee at this meeting. There are more in the committee, but 10 people at that meeting. Sea level rise, storm frequency, and the difficulty of getting insurance. And if you don't have insurance, then you can't get financing. And if you don't get financing, buildings stop. Loans stop. Economic activity stops. So that is something to really worry about. Second priority was 16 points. Dune erosion, beach cobbling, breaching of the beach. And this is something that the coalition study of Gooseberry is with a generous grant from the Rathman Foundation that needs to be partially matched. It's got BU and VIMS and other academic, and I note both Jim Rathman's here, Mark Rasmussen's here. It's a 3-year study, very serious, going to certainly do a lot of serious modeling that gets at sand transport and other aspects that impact the questions that's this second priority about erosion. But this is the second priority that this committee is looking at. The third priority with 13.5 points, health of the river ecosystem, salt marshes, the compounding that warming water has on the nitrogen problem. That's the most serious problem in the pollution of the rivers. That's the third priority. The fourth priority with 10 points, the effect on the water table and how you get saline intrusion into wells and septic systems. That's the fourth priority. And then going down to 5 points, the navigability of the harbor, and then down to 0 points, the movement of fish, impact of ocean acidification on shellfish and things like that, and also with 0 points, health of Cocky's Pond. That's not to say these are not problems. It's just to say if you've only got 3 dots, you can't put them everywhere. And so we knew that in prioritizing, we are going to have to start to lay out, once we identify risks, what actions should the people of Westport through town meeting take to address these risks. And you're going to have to start with the most important or most urgent things first, and leave other problems for later. And so we're trying to get at priorities so we can figure out where do you start first, because you can't start everywhere first. And so that's the purpose of prioritizing. We then started to look at potential projects for addressing these risks, because that's how you get into an action plan. And so we discussed things from beginning shoreline monitoring projects, public education to homeowners about the risks to their homes, about how they might think about vegetated buffers between lawns and the river, things like that, about rainwater systems. I won't go into all of those things. I just want to give you a sense of how this committee is thinking and how they're going from risk to prioritizing to projects to address the risks. And so with that, let me ask the other members of the committee what I've missed or if I got the emphasis incorrect. So Dave, you were there. Phil Weinberg was there. I think Constance was there. Anything you guys want to add?
Thanks, John. I'll just add one thing. A factor in our ranking was what we can influence and what we can monitor. But other than that, you did a great job running down the minutes. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Phil or anyone else who was there? Any questions of any of us?
John, for the record, I was not at the meeting on the 27th. I was at the first meeting where we assigned, we did that
okay.
exercise.
Well, you have such a presence, Constant, it carries over from one meeting to the next. That's why I thought you were there.
Thank you.
All right. Now, I noticed that our town planner's here, right? Michael, are you here? Okay, so Michael,
Yes.
welcome. First on the agenda was introductions, and I put it off, Michael, until you got here because I thought this would be a great part of the meeting for everyone to introduce themselves. And I'm going to begin with you, Michael, so you can introduce yourself. I understand you're from Ohio. Is that some part? That's west of Worcester, right? So will you tell us a little bit about yourself? Then we'll go around the room and people can introduce themselves to you.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the land of cornfields and Buckeyes, born and raised in Ohio. Just moved out here to Bristol a month ago. And I'm really excited to work with you all.
Thank you, Michael. All right. I'm going to go down my chart here. So I see a phone number that 508 ends in 37. Who's that? You're on mute.
That's Sean Leach.
Sean.
Sean Leach. John Boy.
Sean.
Yeah.
Would
Yep.
you introduce yourself? Have you met Michael yet?
Yes, I have. We met the other day. You probably won't remember me, but I was in the office the other day. My name's Sean Leach. I'm an engineer and surveyor by trade, but I'm also on the beach committee and, of course, on this committee. I'm serving here on the beach committee aspect. And welcome to Westport, Mike.
Thanks, Sean. Amy? I think you probably met Michael.
Hello, I'm Amy. I'm the assistant town planner. And yes, I've met Michael on a daily basis, Monday through Friday for a couple weeks now. So I'm excited. I'm excited to work with him, and the office is grateful for him.
All right, Constance. You're muted. There you go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Michael. I'm Constance Ski, and I would like to say, go Buckeyes. I used to teach at Ohio State and enjoyed Columbus very much. We're so happy to have you. I live over here on the west bank of the west branch of the Westport River, and we'll have to have you over this way sometime. And I'm on the Zoning Board of Appeals. Welcome.
Great. Thank you.
Courtney.
Hi, Michael. Welcome. My name is Courtney Rocha. I'm a Westport resident, and I also work for the state of Massachusetts for the MVP program.
Thanks,
Okay.
Courtney. David Cole, would you introduce yourself?
I'm a former member of the planning board and on various other committees here in town. I'm so old I ought to quit these things, but I can't give it up. But I was in my former life academic economist working on economic development, and I lived down at the Point. So we'll have you down there too. We're right at the heart of the action. Bye.
David Sprogis.
Hi, Michael. I'm Dave Sprogis. I'm a summer resident of Westport and an avid fisherman. Welcome aboard.
Jim Rathman.
Here we go. Yeah, I'm Jim Rathman. I'm also a Westport resident, not just a bit south of where Constance lives. And I'm just interested in these issues, so it'll be fun to have even more people working on them. So welcome.
Jeff Canton. You're on mute, Jeff.
Hey, David, Jeff Canton. I'm a Westport resident helping David with the engagement and fundraising committee. And I recently retired from 35 years as an environmental consultant.
Thanks, Jeff. Jim Whiten. I think you know him. Introduce yourself, Jim. You're muted.
Okay, I'm Jim Whiten, and I'm the chair of the planning board, and Michael is very familiar with me, and I with him, and we're very, very, very happy to have him on board, as well as Amy. And hopefully, now that we got a full house, we can start getting some more things done.
Thanks, Jim. Josephine Goldsby, who I just saw over in Fairhaven at the Climate Project meeting.
Yes, congratulations, Michael. It's great to have a planner on board in Westport. My background is in environmental design and planning and environmental art. And so this is my first visit to this meeting and hope it will continue. It's a very positive process. So thank you very much for all of your efforts.
And Karen Schwalbe, who gets a big congratulations for a well-earned promotion. Karen.
Thank you. I was formerly executive director of CMAP, the Southeastern Massachusetts Agricultural Partnership, and we represent farmers in Bristol, Plymouth, and Norfolk County. And as of 2 weeks ago, I became executive director of the Massachusetts Farm Bureau. So, and interested in the connection between agriculture and climate and how our farms can work as a climate sink. And also on the Agricultural Commission in Falmouth. So we are facing some of the same issues in our own backyard that you guys are facing in yours.
Thanks, Karen. We're really glad you're here. Mark Rasmussen, who's muted. There he is.
Hey, Michael. Welcome. Mark Rasmussen. I'm president of Buzzards Bay Coalition. We're a regional conservation organization, and in Westport, we're very active in land conservation, water quality monitoring, advocacy. So I think you'll hopefully see a lot of me. I'm looking forward to meeting you. I am a Dartmouth resident. I live just over the line off Division Road. Welcome.
Thanks, Mark. Dr. Michael Yagman, who's muted.
Yes, I'm Michael Yagman. I'm a pediatrician by training and expertise in public health. So particularly interested in the health impacts of climate change and mental health impacts on young people. I have been in Westport about 5 years and been on River Road and welcome, Michael. Look forward to learning much more from the wonderful group of people on this committee.
Thanks. And Phil Weinberg, who's muted.
Hi. Well, there I am. Hi, I'm Michael Phil Weinberg. I am vice chair of the Board of Health, also a member of the Conservation Commission, and just take the opportunity to welcome you. I'm in the annex often, so when I'm over there, I'll stop in and we can shake hands. I also am the Conservation Commission representative on the Community Preservation Committee, which has its meeting at 6:30. And so since I have to eat between meetings, I may leave this meeting early. So I'll just take that opportunity. So I look forward to meeting you.
We may take you out of order then, right after introduction, so you can do that.
All right. Thanks.
So next is the famous Ray Raposa, profiled in Shorelines. And he told me yesterday he's always been famous.
Yeah, but I also told you I was infamous as well. I'm Ray Raposa. I am a lifelong resident and farmer in Westport, and I wasn't told that you grew up in farm country, so I'm a little intrigued by that, but I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Read the Shorelines profile where you learn that Ray learned how to drive a tractor at age 5. Fascinating. Okay. Richard Ilgen, you're muted. Still mute. There you go.
Yep.
There you go.
And, yeah, Richard Elgin. I was at John's meeting the other night at Fairhaven also, and that's when I learned about this group. So I decided to join in. I'm in January of this past year, I became a full-time resident of Westport. I left my civic obligations in Boston, and now I'm trying to get involved in the conservation issues in this neighborhood. So I'm looking forward to learning all about this.
Thank you, Richard. Robert Daler, muted.
I'll say hi to Michael, but I see him on a daily basis. And not only did I participate in helping hire him, but I put him to work before he even arrived here in town. And he's done a wonderful job. Michael holds both an undergraduate degree in planning and a master's degree in city and regional planning, and is an AICP certified planner and a graduate of The Ohio State.
All right. And a person who needs no introduction, but she's going to introduce herself anyway, Shauna Schufeld. Shauna.
Hi, I'm Shauna. I am chair of the select board, so I get to serve on lots and lots of committees as a select board representative. I have an Ohio connection, but alas, I have a child in Athens at Ohio University. So I think I'm outnumbered, but I still go Bobcats.
Okay. And someone just joined us with a telephone number 774 ending in 61. Would you introduce yourself? You're muted. There you go.
Hi, Laura Hatley calling.
Laura, thanks for joining us. We're just finished with introductions, and we've done a couple of committee reports already on engagement and water. And Phil said he had to leave because he got another meeting. So Phil, would you give a health report, subcommittee report?
Yes, it's short because the committee hasn't met. As people know, we kind of put together our, preliminary kind of strategic report on health, focusing on extreme heat. Michael, helped draft that report. I think that the next activity, concrete activity that the Board of Health and perhaps the committee will get involved in is the redrafting, updating of the town's emergency response plan, which I understand they've received a grant for, or we've received a grant for. And I think there may be a number of aspects of that, that are relevant to representatives of this committee on infrastructure, from the housing perspective, clearly looking at, stormwater, and storm impacts, that would displace persons. And so there may be an opportunity through the emergency response plan to, take some concrete steps on the preparatory side. And I don't have a timetable for that yet. I think the grant was just issued, not that long ago, but so that's kind of on my radar screen.
All right. Does that complete your report?
It does. Thank you.
Anyone else from health want to add to that? Any questions of Phil? All right. Thanks, Phil, very much.
Pleasure, John.
And I know you and others serve the town of Westport in many ways, and I do appreciate you and all the people who do that for your time. Infrastructure and safety, Bob Daler.
Well, there's a lot going on, and with the minutes that we just adopted this evening, I think I should update on what's going on. So there is a infrastructure oversight committee that was formed by the selectmen, and we meet monthly and are active. We have recommended hiring a project manager to assist Jim Hartnett, the town administrator. And we have interviewed candidates, and we'll be making a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen on Monday night. So this is to put some staffing capabilities in an action plan on infrastructure. As I reported earlier, there are 3 design contracts for trunk water and sewer in Route 6 in North Westport. And those designs are wrapping up and are in the permitting phase and would be suitable for bidding sometimes early in the spring. I had reported earlier that we made a MassWorks grant application for the phase 1 of those sewers. So this is in the section between the Fall River line. It makes the connection to Fall River, from Fall River to Route 88. And that application was denied, and we asked for a debriefing, and we had a debriefing this morning with the program chief and the deputy chiefs. And basically, because the focus of MassWorks grants are investment which creates economic development, they perceive Sleepy Westport as not, even though we are shovel ready with our infrastructure that they could fund, that there weren't real developers in hand or projects in hand for job creation, and therefore we ranked lower and didn't get the grant. But we are, as I will report, we don't give up easily, either on this committee or the planning board or the infrastructure oversight committee. And we have met in person with our State House Representative Schmidt and Senator Rodericks, and with all of the congressional liaisons from Representative Keating, Senator Warren, Senator Markey. And Senator Markey's office has been extraordinarily helpful. They have a Southeast Regional Coordinator, and they arranged a Congressional Research Office summary of all the potential infrastructure grants and loan programs that Westport could be eligible for. And they presented that material to us, and we're exploring several of those avenues for increased funding. On the harbor water study, the town has hired a consultant, Weston and Sampson. They were supposed to wrap up their work in October, and we have been pressing them to get their report for a potential water supply, which would move the present 3 public-private water companies that sit in the flood hazard area to move a joint supply safely away from the sea level rise and the increasing salinity in their well systems. So that is still in the works and should be wrapped up. DEP has issued their 10/28/22 draft revisions to Title V. Those draft revisions provide a couple of alternatives to towns that have TMDL limits, that is, for impaired waters such as the Westport River Estuary that has an EPA listed nitrogen limit. They have drafted a new set of regulations that requires within 5 years of the designation of a nitrogen sensitive area, that all septic systems in the town would have to be nitrogen reducing to the latest technology. There is another alternative, which is the town could enter into an application for a water permit for the watershed, in which we would negotiate a schedule and implementation schedule, and the town would commit to implementing that to avoid every individual being forced to adopt nitrogen reducing systems. So I met with Phil this afternoon, and we are drafting a briefing for the town administrator, and we have an opportunity to comment on the draft regulations, and we will do that. In regarding the new grant, we will be the grant for updating our emergency response plan. We will be looking in the planning department for not only coordinating on the public health and safety side, but looking at the kind of response that our emergency providers would need to have, and do things like marking evacuation routes and flood hazard areas and those kinds of things, which we all know exist, but are in this town go unmarked. So we're active, and I'd like to say that we're making progress, but we're certainly active in proceeding on a lot of fronts. And of course, at the end of all this is we'll need to find some source of money for all of this activity.
Is that your report, Bob?
Yes.
I have a question before asking others for questions. At the beginning of the meeting, while I was stalling for time, I read excerpts from the trustees' report on Westport, and on the section on impact on roads, it said a 10-year flood is projected to inundate 14 miles of or 5% of town roads, a 10-year flood. And David said that, well, those they're using a projection that is not realistic. I have, I guess, a two-part question, or maybe a three-part question. Is the infrastructure committee, in listening to all the things you're looking at, I didn't hear a specific mention of roads. And it was something that the East Beach Committee looked at in terms of the East Beach Road and whether we should work to elevate it, to protect it from sea level rise and storm surge. And the charter of this committee is, of course, the entire town of Westport, not just East Beach. So if you accept what the trustees are talking about, they look at it slightly differently. They're looking at a 10-year flood, so it's a different set of probabilities. It impacts 14 miles, and they talk about, East Beach Road, River Road, Atlantic Avenue, John Reed Road, Kirby Brook, Main Road, and Route 6. They don't even look at Cherry and Webb, my street, which almost floods, every high tide. I don't know why they leave that one out. So my questions are, do you accept the data that this is founded on, which the state uses, or do you use other data? And are you going to address roads, which in some cases are evacuation roads, that hence the title of your subcommittee, Infrastructure and Safety? And is there going to be both official town data or mapping that says this is what's likely to happen either by a 2030, 2050, 2070, or the way the trustees does it, this is a 10-year flood or a 100-year flood, however you do it, so that people get to look at, oh, this is a risk. And this is what might happen to the road I use or the road I might use to get out of town if Hurricane Nicole comes and hits. You're muted, Bob.
The answer to that is yes. We will look at that, and it's one of the topics in the emergency response plan. We'll be looking at all these flooded areas, and I think both our final report should map all those in the intent I think one of the outputs of the emergency response plan will be to map and identify evacuation routes and also map the flooding level. If one drives over through Bristol, you can see that kind of most of the Rhode Island from looking at Westport and Little Compton and the lower part of Tiverton, the escape routes from the beach are all marked, and the areas of severe flooding that could trap you are also marked. And I expect that we'll end up, that'll be a recommendation in the emergency response plan, and that we'll mark those areas. And I think our report will show those flooding areas. So yes, all of those things are things that will be tackled, I think, in the immediate future. And to get to your question, do I believe in the projections that the state has made? Yes, I do. And I, as you know, I work in this area and I work with those projections frequently.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Any other questions from others to Bob and the Infrastructure Safety Committee?
Yes, John.
Yeah, David.
Could Robert call out the specific RCP that, just for the record, is it RCP 9?
I don't know which RCP are you talking about.
Well, you're creating a report and recommendations for flood zones and evacuation routes and such upon the state adopted RCP. I'm asking, can you call out specifically the RCP to which you're referring?
We haven't decided which of those we will use. Probably in the planning, not the extreme, but again, it really doesn't matter because, all we're talking about is the degree to which the flooding will occur. That, I think the difference between those projections are the difference between having 3 or 4 feet of water and 5 or 6 feet of water. For automobile safety and traffic, I think, I don't think it makes a significant difference. And the committee hasn't decided which projection we will use, but I think if your question was what did the trustees use, I believe they used 9.
Yeah, I accept your point that they're matters of degree, but the time differences between them are huge. We're talking about 50 to 100 years difference between which one you pick. And so we know that roads and telephone poles and all of those things would have to be replaced multiple times over 100 years. So the horizon matters, which is why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, and not to make this into a debate, but I think in the roads that we were talking about, the time doesn't matter. The risk now, all of those roads were inundated severely and damaged severely in 1938. That's an event that has occurred. It has 100% probability of occurring again. And so this is not a projection of some fantasy that we think will never happen. This kind of flooding has happened and will happen again in those roads. And it's not a matter of if 38 were to happen tomorrow, it would be, under 5 or 6 feet of water and breaking waves over many of those beaches we just talked about. So it isn't as if this is something that may never happen. These are events that have already happened, have 100% probability of happening again, and probably will only happen to a greater severity at some time in the future. So I think we're not planning for something that's unlikely to happen. We're planning for things that have actually happened and will happen again. So I think of it in a much more practical sense.
Thanks, Bob. Jim Whiten has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to do a mea culpa. I think the reason that Cherry Webb is not on their radar is when I spoke with them some time ago and talked to them for about an hour about Westport, I did not mention Cherry and Webb, but I did mention those other roads. So
Well, thanks. When I'm taking my canoe down Cherry and Webb, I'll think of you, Jim, then.
it just wasn't on my radar to be flooded. I just hadn't been over there when it has. So anyway, I think that the discussion between Bob and David Spragus is germane. I think that in all of these things that we're trying to itemize and do, at least the physical ones, we should be ranking them in terms of when do we do this? When do we go looking for money to do each of these things? Is it 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now? Is it, when is it it is on our radar? What's the priority time-wise for each of these things? So just my 2 cents.
All right. Thank you very much. So now we have agriculture. Ray.
Okay. I guess I was a little alarmed and concerned over the report that you gave from the trustees about how much roads might be lost in the worst case scenario. I guess that brought up to my mind about how much land we might lose, specifically farmland. I think that's something we're going to have to work on in the future, coming up with some figures there with where the tide ends up eventually and how much farmland along the rivers pretty much are going to be lost. Currently, the biggest problem, let me back up a little and I say my focus is on agricultural resiliency going forward. And one of the things that an article that you sent to me, John, was the town of Harvard. They had some concerns and some proposals that I had looked over. They don't have the same problems we might have with the flooding in the future.
Right.
But that's something we're going to have to work on. We had a meeting early in the spring. We haven't had any in the summer. We will have some subcommittee meetings going through the winter. There's a lot more time for that. One of the things we are working on, myself and AgCom, is we're working with Al Averill, who is who worked as a soil scientist for the USDA for pretty much all his life. And we're working on a project which will identify farmland in town so that there might be funds available through the USDA for easements on their properties. We're going to recognize prime farmland of statewide importance, and farmland of local importance. So that's a project we're working on. We'll be working on that in the future. When COVID hit, before COVID hit, I was talking about how the state of Massachusetts is looking to preserve farmland, and sometimes when we give away some of the 61A land in Westport, we're giving away the land. And I think that the state of Massachusetts is concerned moving forward as to how much land we are losing to development. With that said, I think that I lost my train of thought there, but before COVID hit, I thought the state was looking forward 100 years, let's say, in agriculture. And then when COVID hit, when there was no meat on the shelves and people were concerned in Westport, that became something a little different that we weren't really concerned about. So I think agricultural resiliency in Westport is important. And I think we do need to look forward into the future, not just for the next 10 years, but possibly in 50 or even 100 years. We don't have a crystal ball, but I'd like to work on those problems moving forward and identify what we might have to do in the future going through the winter.
Well, thanks, Ray, and I enjoyed our conversation yesterday. And I think what we need to do in ag is to get beef up your committee, see if we can get a couple more farmers, and maybe you and I talked about that professor out at UMD. And Karen, I don't know, with your new responsibilities, whether you can, you and I had talked when you were still at CMAP. I don't know whether you can still be part of this, or whether you're just going to be too busy now at the Farm Bureau, but we'd love to have you participate if you can.
I can. I think sometimes it will be from the car. My office is in Marlborough, and I am driving back and forth to Falmouth still. So some days I may have to take the calls from the car if they're at 5, but I can still participate, and I'm still getting out into the community. What's the professor you're looking at you said University of Maryland?
Massachusetts, Dartmouth.
Oh, UMass Dartmouth.
Yeah, Ray had been talking to some. What's her name?
I'm not sure what her name is. I've saved her email to contact her. Her specialization is resiliency. And at the time when we emailed back and forth, she was holding a class with the students. Her project was agricultural resiliency. So that's her specialization. Her name, I'm not sure of off the top of my head, but it's something that I've saved as far as my emails.
Cool. So yes, you still have my interest and my attention on the topic.
Good. Thank you.
Karen, thank you very much. So, all right. So that completes our subcommittee reports. We've got in other business, a discussion of open meeting law related to subcommittees. And I think, Michael, you've looked at that. Well, Michael's got a cat, and then he's next to Shauna, who had a cat. I don't want a cat fight breaking out on Zoom with two different people with cats. I don't know how I would deal with that. But at any rate, Michael, what are your thoughts on I think we're pretty good in terms of the big committee, because Amy's been posting the meetings, recording minutes. I think everything's good to go on the big committee. What are your thoughts on the subcommittees?
So as far as the subcommittees go, I would recommend that the subcommittees also follow open meeting law. When John first brought this up to me, he forwarded an email that was expressing some concerns that that the subcommittee should be following open meeting law procedures. And so I looked into it. I found some legal counsel from the town of Belmont, from their town council, and their town council advised them that they were doing a similar thing with the subcommittees. And their town council advised them that the legal defensibility of it is to not follow open meeting law is probably kind of flimsy and likely to be open to challenge if someone were to want to pursue that. So to be a little bit cautious in our approach, but that's why I would recommend that the subcommittees post meeting notices, take their notes for recording minutes, things like that.
So, with you and Amy, and recognizing this is a group of volunteers, can we get assistance from the planning office? If a subcommittee chair says, I want to have a meeting, can they work with you or Amy to say, this is when I want to have it, and will you guys take care of posting it?
Yep, we can do that. We've discussed that in our office already. We're prepared to coordinate the meetings. We would ask that the subcommittees appoint clerks to take meeting minutes. They don't have to be super detailed, but just get the essential point of what's being discussed, the motions, those kinds of things. And we would coordinate posting agendas, any necessary filings. I think that can come through our office just so we can make sure all of those pieces are being completed and we're following open meeting law.
Now, thank you. Let me press my luck. Can you send out the invitation with the link and host the meeting, the remote meeting?
I don't know if we'll host the. Well, that's a good question. I don't think we've talked about exactly how we would get the meetings. Amy, would the meetings have to be recorded?
I'm not sure if they'd have to be recorded, but if the only way that the subcommittees are meeting right now is through virtual, then if the person who is holding the virtual meeting just records it and could send it to one of us, possibly. I'm not clear on that.
Yeah, we could generate the so when we pull together the agenda, we can, or you all send us the subcommittee's agenda. I bet we can generate a Google Meeting link, and that we can probably assign controls to someone who is planning on attending that meeting. But yeah, we should look into whatever capabilities we would have to coordinate.
Let me suggest that might vary between the different chairs. And so some chairs may be very able to say, I can host it, I can record it, and I'll do the minutes. Like Mike, for example, has been doing that without a problem. And then I don't know how, if he talks to Amy and said, once I record it, I can send you the recording. I don't know. If I had to do that, I'd go shoot myself. But, you know, Mike might, with guidance from Amy, say, yeah, I can send you the recording. But, you know, that might be different depending on who the chair is. But if you can assist each chair on posting the meetings properly with the right amount of notice, and getting the word out to all the committee members, so that every member on our, like we have 21 people, this is great attendance at this meeting, fantastic attendance, so that everyone knows about these meetings. So if somebody wants to drop into a water committee or an ag committee or something like that, they know how to do it. That'd be as well as the public. That would be great.
Yeah, we can definitely help out with that. Jim,
okay.
Yeah, everybody who is a signed-in member of the committee should go through the state process of getting approved, that you know what open meeting law is. And there's an online I guess, webinar test that you go through, and you can't fail. You just can't get out of it until you got it all right. And it's very, very helpful. Minutes do not have to be recorded minutes. Minutes can be typed. They can be emailed. They must be saved somewhere. And they don't have to have the verbatim discussions. They just have to say, we discussed road infrastructure, and we're going to look into River Road or whatever. It doesn't have to have the back and forth. And it's important to do this because, for instance, the Cultural Council was trolled by somebody that was in Ohio or someplace that gave a notice to the Attorney General that they weren't adhering to open meeting law. So these kind of things are, if it gets to the point where the town council has to get involved, that's not a good thing. So it's just easier to comply with open meeting law and have everybody go through that process to understand what it is.
Okay, so I appreciate, I think we've got this figured out. And so the various chairs, Phil Weinberg isn't here and Mike isn't here, but Ray, Bob Daler, is David Cole still here? I don't see him. We'll know to just contact Amy when they're about to set up a subcommittee meeting, and that will maybe Mike Yagman, you can reach out to David and when he's about to set up your next meeting, and just make sure work with Amy. But the planning office will provide support in making sure it's posted and we conform with the open meeting law. So I appreciate that, Michael and Amy, very much for doing that. So that takes care of the open meeting law and the subcommittee support. The third item on other business is hazard mitigation plan, letter of intent. Michael, are you going to talk about that?
Yeah, we have prepared a letter of intent to submit to MEMA for their hazard mitigation grant program. The letter itself, it's a form letter that they prepared, and MEMA actually prepared, applies on the behalf of, they do a batch of applications for different communities around the state, and they submit that application to FEMA. So they provide a form letter. We just essentially put in the parameters of what we're looking to do and how much it might cost, and what our match is going to be, and who some of the parties might be involved in the planning process. So we're planning on submitting that to MEMA here shortly. And the hazard mitigation plan it's important because earlier we were talking about different projects that may need to get funding. So there's some discussion about different projects with East Beach. And so some of the projects with East Beach, in order for us to get other funding sources to fund those projects through programs like the Building Resilient Infrastructure program, in order to get those grants, you need to have a hazard mitigation plan. So like in the East Beach MVP, there's it's proposed that there's an emergency access and egress contingency plan. There's a dune and beach monitoring program. All these things need to have the hazard mitigation plan as a precursor. So we're going to submit this letter of intent to MEMA. It is due December 5th. So what I ask from the CRC is a motion to support our letter of intent to submit to MEMA.
So Bob, this is, you made reference to this, and this is the, relates to the plan that the fire chief had been working on, correct? You're mute.
Yes, and I would support this, the emergency response plan is really an update of a plan that we have now, but things have conditioned have changed since it was last updated. I mean, we have a new high school, we have, all those kinds of
Right.
things come into play.
And so this letter really, as Michael said, is the foundation for all kinds of other grant applications, that some of which can bring large amounts of money to the town. So it's very important. Would someone make a motion to?
So moved.
That was pretty quick.
Jim White?
You don't even know what kind of motion I was going to ask for. So was there a second?
Yes. Bob,
Okay, second. And I'll leave it up to you, Michael, to draft whatever motion you just got endorsed. And then call me and I'll come in and sign it. Okay. Any debate?
I think you need a vote, right?
Oh, yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Didn't hear any opposed, so it passes. Now, last item, Buzzards Bay, NEP. Is this also you, Michael?
Yes, that is me. Just before we move on from the hazard mitigation grant program, if anybody has any ideas for potential consultants for this project, so environmental engineering firms, anyone like that, you can just please feel free to get in contact with me and forward it to me. We have a couple of folks on our list, but the more the better. So for the Buzzards Bay, it's the Buzzards Bay Natural Estuary Program. There was a notice of funds available through the bipartisan infrastructure law. And this notice of funds available it's for the program is intended for protecting and restoring water quality and living resources in the Buzzards Bay and the surrounding watershed. So they put this NOFA out recently, and the kinds of projects that they are prioritizing in this area are infrastructure projects, and those projects should be ideally, again, they would be prioritized. So they would ideally be in or near what they're calling environmental justice communities. And so we have three actually in Westport. Two are 1/2 mile circles around the schools. And the other is a census block group. I know folks on the planning board will be familiar with this one, but there's a census block group that is between Sanford Road and Route 88. And then it's bounded by Route 6 and Route 177 to the north and south. Again, if you need, us to clarify, I didn't distribute a map. I can distribute a map of this area after this meeting. But if anybody has any ideas for projects that potentially meet the Buzzards Bay requests for proposals, feel free to let us know, and our office can assist with the application.
Jim Whiten has his hand up.
Yeah, I think that Mark Rasmussen is on the call here. I had a discussion with him this morning about the applicability of this grant program for renewing our effort to do a packaged sanitary sewer in the Let area, which is 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Street and Bayside Restaurant. And Mark has had a discussion with Joe Costa, the head of the Buzzards Bay Natural Estuaries program, And I think this might be a winner. So I'd like, if the chair is so moved, to let Mark Rasmussen discuss this.
Sure, Mark.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, there's the estuary program was granted $5 million of bipartisan infrastructure money. This is going to come out over the next 5 years from them. This is round one. 700,000 is available, but there'll be another round following it up very quickly in April. So this is a great new source of funds for water quality improvement in the Bay. It is very infrastructure focused, as you'd imagine. Specifically, one of the items that's eligible for funding is design of wastewater systems to deal with nitrogen pollution. This was deliberately added. You're not going to build much infrastructure for nitrogen for wastewater with maximum grants of 400,000, but 400,000 is just right for design of certain projects. So we had done a lot of work. Every town board involved here submitted letters of support. We had the full application prepared for the LET for the MVP program, and that was rejected a few months ago. And moreover, we learned in that process that MVP is not going to be the source for septic upgrades, wastewater fixes. That's not the place to go. So I talked about that proposal with Joe Costa at the estuary program. He encouraged us to bring the LET project to this grant. The numbers match the grant. We had asked for 275,000 from MVP with an expected 30,000 town ARPA funds as match. That was the request here. So we can go up to 400,000 with the Buzzards Bay Estuary program. No match is required, but it's encouraged. And so I want to have a conversation with the selectmen about whether or not the ARPA funding is still available. I'm not sure that it is. But if it is, it'd be great to still have that 30,000 in ARPA money. But to make a request to the estuary program for around 275, Michael, our office, we would be happy to work on the proposal with you. We do a lot of these proposals to the estuary program, so very happy to help on writing these. And I think we have a good candidate and a project that's still ready to go. Remember, the adjacent neighbor to the neighborhood, the private landowner, had offered their field for this wastewater system, and that's sort of an offer that's outstanding there, and one that we should not pass up. So I'm with Jim. I think the LET is the right project for this grant. Now,
So can I ask a question?
About Michael? The grant program does make a strong emphasis. All the bipartisan infrastructure money does. 40% of this money must be spent in areas identified as environmental justice neighborhoods. So they will always be stronger, but they're not the only things you can apply for.
Great. Yep. Thanks, Mark. Yeah. If we can correspond a little bit off this call, get in touch with us, and yeah, we'll coordinate from there.
Great.
Any questions on that? Any reason why we shouldn't go forward on that? I was going to ask a question on the justice aspect, but as usual, Mark Rasmussen answers my questions before I have a chance to ask them. So he always does that. Drives me crazy. So, all right.
John,
we have gone through, yeah, Mark.
So the grants are due, the call comes out in a few weeks, and then they're due in January. I'm guessing we'll have another meeting before then, but would it be appropriate to ask for a letter of support from the Climate Resilience Committee now, just to have that off our plates?
Was that a motion?
I can make it one.
I can
sure.
make
a motion.
Yeah.
I'll make that motion that we support.
All right, motion by Jim Whiten. Is there a second? Is there a second? It's seconded by Bob Daler that we support the application to NEP for an amount to be worked out by the town planner in consultation with Buzzards Bay Coalition and the planning board for the project at the LET. And so any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's passed. Thank you very much. That's a great idea, Mark. Now we're at the end of the agenda, except for next meeting date. So usually what we want to do is allow enough time so that the subcommittees can meet. And we're getting to that time of year where we have things like Thanksgiving and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and Christmas and Veterans Day and stuff like that. So what do you think we should try and do? Squeeze something in before the end of the year? Any thoughts? Right, or right after.
I'll make a suggestion for very early in January and try to skip. If we look out a month, I think we'll be into the period where we'll start losing a lot of folks.
Yeah. All right. So let's look at Thursdays have been pretty good. So let's look at, and what is today? It's the second Thursday. I think Sean has said we've been going with second Thursdays. So if we do the second Thursday in January, what does that look like?
It's the 12th.
The 12th. So how's that look for people? January 12th at 5?
Yep.
I'm not hearing any objections. So next meeting is Dave Sproga said, for the record, I still cannot vote because he's not sworn in. But I already said, David, I'm not differentiating between people who are sworn in and people who aren't. So I don't give a hoot. But it's all right. If you do, it's all right.
I just said, I didn't know if on open meeting law that if the minutes reflected who voted one way or the other, if that was.
No, I'm just saying who's in favor, who's against, and I'm not, we're not doing roll. No one's ever asked for a roll call.
Okay.
So so far we've been operating by consensus. So if someone asks for a roll call, I'm going to have to ask Amy for who are the sworn in members, but it hasn't happened yet. I hope it doesn't. My opinion is everyone here is, intelligent and well-meaning and, is in line with the mission of the committee. So, all right. So we're going to meet January 12th, 5 o'clock. So we've got plenty of time because that's next year. So, we're not meeting till next year. So, take a day off. Tomorrow's a day off. No, I'm going 10 o'clock, Beech Grove Cemetery. Okay.
Happy New Year.
I will, today is the birthday of the Marine Corps and tomorrow's Veterans Day. So we will see you whenever we see you, but thank you all very much for the time you spend on this committee. It is important. Appreciate it. Is there a motion to adjourn? Yes. Second, all in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.